I know that some people are nostalgic for the PlayStation 1's polygonal graphics, but this is not it. Like, at all. Hello, Tactics Heads! No, that's stupid. Let's start out. When talking about tactical RPG series, there are a few names that immediately come to mind. Fire Emblem, Final Fantasy Tactics, and Shining Force all immediately spring to life when talking about influential tactics RPGs. While being a niche genre, these titles are all pretty mainstream, but there are a lot of tactics games out there that are less well known. One of these series is Brigandine. There are only 2 games in the series with release dates 22 years apart. Brigandine, The Legend of Forsena, and Brigandine, The Legend of Runersia are not huge blockbusters. You won't often hear them talked about when discussing tactics RPGs, save for the occasional, oh yeah, that's that PS1 game, right? I never played it. But the Brigandine series has some stalwart and dedicated fans. These are the kind of fans who prefer Pathfinder to Dungeons & Dragons. That level of dedication to the genre. So, fellow Rune Knights, let's summon our monsters, get on the hex grid, have our bishops cast Halo on us, and dive deep into Forsena and Runersia. Brigandine Genso Teruku Senki was developed by Hardy Robin, originally known as Easley Staff. Hardy Robin would publish it in Japan for the PlayStation in 1998. Atlas would publish the game in North America in 1998 under the name Brigandine: The Legend of Forsena. Character designs were handled by Yoichi Kawade and Yoji Kurachi, with Kawade also doing some artwork for Ys 4. Kawade was also the main game designer, director, and programmer. Hardy Robin sadly didn't work on much other than Brigandine, other than a Wonderswan compilation of Alchemist Marie and Eli. They did eventually release the Grand Edition of Brigandine, but we'll talk about that a little bit later on. Brigandine being a tactics game, you can expect a political themed story based around warring kingdoms, but Brigandine, for better or worse, has a lot more game than story. And after just finishing Triangle Strategy and jumping right into Tactics Ogre Reborn, this was really appreciated. Anecdotes aside, the story of Brigandine takes place on the continent of Forsena, where a coup has taken place in the kingdom of Almechia. Zemeckis, commander of Almechia's army, is convinced by the Death Knight Cador to take the throne for his own and overthrows the king. The kingdom is then renamed as Garez. This political upheaval causes the kingdoms of Forsena to erupt in war. You can choose from one of 6 different lords who are attempting to take over the other kingdoms of Forsena. Prince Lance of New Almechia has sworn revenge on Zemeckis and Cador and won't stop until he has taken back his kingdom, along with everybody else's. Lofty goals for a character who starts at level 1, but there you go. Despite starting weak AF, Lance eventually becomes one of the best units in the game. Kai of Caerleon is a magician who rules a nation of magicians. He enters the war for the betterment of his people and allies with Almechia early on. Choosing either kingdom means you don't have to worry about one of your neighbors constantly trying to invade you. This is great for new players or if you just want an easy start. Vaynard the White Wolf is the ruler of Icy Kingdom Norgard. Before the events of the game, Norgard lost a war against Almechia, so Vaynard enters this new war with revenge on his mind. He's a bit emo, but that's okay. He's on the box. The Mad Monarch Drist rules Escalio. He wants to wage war just for fun. Okay. Queen Lioness rules the religious country of Leonia. She's a healer and starts with 2 Rune Knights that are also healers. Maybe skip her if it's your first playthrough. Zemeckis rules New Asgara's empire, and you can't play as him, so just smash him with rocks, I guess. So you might be wondering, what are Rune Knights? And this is the section where I tell you what Rune Knights are. Rune Knights are basically your main troops. There are 2 types of units in this game, Rune Knights and monsters. Rune Knights are your main troops, while monsters are basically their backup. When a Rune Knight dies, your monsters retreat, unless they can't, then the enemy team captures them. Rune Knights have all different classes ranging from fighters, mages, healers, archers, etc. Rune Knights have an area around them where their monsters get bonuses, so it's always a good idea to keep your squad close-knit. I guess this is a good way to ensure that you're leveling your knights, not just your monsters. Rune Knights also get to equip items unlike monsters. Monsters are units that accompany Rune Knights into battle. Monsters are dragons, fairies, wolves, djinn, angels, wyverns, and all kinds of other beasts with hosts of powers. Some can fly, some can heal, some have powerful skills, some are affordable. Each Rune Knight only gets to bring X amount of monsters with them into battle. This is determined by their rune power level. Each monster costs a certain amount of rune power, so you can't just put a bunch of dragons into a squad unless the Rune Knight has enough rune power. Rune, rune. Rune, 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 rune. It's good to bring a nice selection of monsters with you into battle, as things can get pretty tricky out there. Healing is great to have, as enemies can hit really hard. AoE attacks are nice to have when everyone is clustered up together, and that will happen. And having some low-level cannon fodder is really helpful in soaking up some damage at the start of combat. Just send a bunch of ghouls to your front lines and snipe at enemies while they deal with them. Combat takes place on a battlefield made of hexes. That's right, we're not dealing with squares like you find in a lot of SRPGs, we're dealing with hexes, and man is it cool. Hexes allow you extra spaces to surround enemies, making combat feel a lot different. Once again, really refreshing after playing Triangle Strategy and Tactics Ogre back to back. During combat, you get to bring up to 3 Rune Knights into battle with you. Combat ends after one side is defeated or retreats, or after 13 rounds where the invading army withdraws automatically. That being said, I've never actually seen battle last more than 7 or 8 rounds. Even with parties loaded down with hordes of monsters, battles move at a pretty quick pace, especially when you turn off battle scenes. Combat is really fun, as every battle is to invade or defend a stronghold. Part of the draw of the game is similar to Dark Wizard. It's that push-pull of trying to take new territory all the while defending your own territory. This tug of war is an incredible draw to this game for me, scrutinizing not just the enemy's power but your own power to see whether you should be invading is such a good time. Another really cool aspect of this tug of war is quests. Each round, month, season, whatever has 2 phases, the organization phase and the attack phase. Attack phase is pretty straightforward. That's when you get to choose to attack if you even want to attack. Organization takes place before attack and allows you to organize your troops, move your troops to other strongholds, equip weapons, summon monsters, and quest. Any units who go on a quest cannot attack or defend this round, so that adds to the push-pull of taking strongholds. If you send a Rune Knight on a quest, they're not going to be able to help if you want to attack a neighbor or if a neighbor attacks you. The draw is that on quests you can get permanent stat upgrades, new equipment, and even new Rune Knights. It's literally risk-reward. Risk reduced power in combat in exchange for some sick loot or a new hero. Or sometimes they get incapacitated, which means they are absent during the next phase as well. Oops. Like most tactics games, you can also promote your units. Some units have multi-tiered promotions, some units only have 1 level of promotion, and some monsters don't get any promotions at all. And some units will join you in a promoted state. That's another thing that can mitigate the difficulty of this game. Some of your Rune Knights and the monsters in their squads will come already in a high level state. For example, looking back at Lance, he might only start off as a level 1 knight, but he has a level 20 promoted salamander in his unit to babysit him. Whereas Vaynard starts off at level 21. This is a great way to make sure that you can tank some hits or kill some bosses early on if needed. The game looks good or bad depending on what you're doing. The world map, character sprites, character portraits, menus, battlefields all look good. I even really like the font in this game. What I don't like is the battle animations. They look bad. When you enter combat during a battle, the scene transitions to a combat screen, you know, like Shining Force or Fire Emblem, typical stuff. But these models just look bad. PS1 polygons can be hit or miss in the modern age, and these definitely miss. They look awkward, they move awkwardly. It's just a big, awkward mess. But the silver lining is that you can actually turn off the battle animations. Hell, Legend of Runersia doesn't even transition to a battle screen. Battles are just played on the world map. The game knows what it's doing. There's a lot of content packed into Brigandine. Each character takes around 20 to 25 hours to complete, and with 5 playable characters, that's a hefty amount of gameplay. And if you want the true ending, you gotta beat them all. A mere 22 years later, Brigandine would finally get a sequel. Brigandine Runersia Senki, Brigandine The Legend of Runersia in the West, was developed by Matrix Software and published by HappyNet. It launched worldwide in June 2020 for the Nintendo Switch, with later ports hitting the PS4 and PC. Matrix Software are responsible for a number of great RPGs like Alundra, the Dragon Quest V port for PS2, the Final Fantasy III port for DS, 4 Heroes of Light, and much more. They even did Alundra 2. Yay. The cool thing is that they managed to get some of the original staff to return and hired some die-hard fans to work on the game. And it really shows. Runersia is one of those sequels that actually takes the original product and makes it better. The gameplay is better, there are more Rune Knights, more monsters, more equipment, quests have been overhauled, there are 6 instead of 5 playable kingdoms, menus are easier to navigate, it just plays a lot better. The scenario writer is my boy Kenji Terada, who did the scenario for Dark Wizard. Hell yes. The score was composed by Tenpei Sato, who worked on Brigandine Grand Edition. This guy also worked on all of the Disgaea games. As you can see, the staff on Runersia have a lot of history with tactics games. The story of Brigandine, The Legend of Runersia, is similar to that of The Legend of Forsena, just in a new land with new characters. On the continent of Runersia, a series of events leads to civil unrest followed by all-out war between the land's 6 nations. Dead kings, new presidents, pirates, ballet, and so much more. Each kingdom has its own reasons for entering the war, and this time all 6 kingdoms are playable. Take that, Zemeckis, you big chungus. This time around, your rulers and nations include Prince Rubino IV of Norzaleo, a young swordsman looking for clues on why his father, the king, was murdered. He bears the Brigandine of Justice. Eliza of the Republic of Gimu, daughter of this land's president. She enters the war in hopes to solve the mystery of magic. Eliza bears the Brigandine of Glory. Talia, the young leader of the Shinobi tribe. While not a kingdom, the Shinobi tribe enters the war in hopes of becoming a kingdom. Talia bears the Brigandine of Freedom. Rudo of the Mana Cilicia Theocracy. Jesus Freaks. Rudo bears the Brigandine of Sanctity. Captain Stella Hammett of the United Islands of Morelva, pirate waifu who enters the war to legitimize the pirate clans. She bears the Brigandine of Ego. Tim of the Holy Gustava Empire. He enters the war to capture all the other Brigandines for his kingdom. He does not bear a Brigandine. Also, his name is Tim, maybe the least threatening name I have ever heard. Yes, the Brigandines in Brigandine 2 are actually Brigandines. In the original Brigandine, the Brigandine was a book, but also in Brigandine 2, the Brigandine is a book. The game also has a lot more subplots than the first game. These subplots usually involve your Rune Knights, and it's a good way to flesh out some of these troops. Although that being said, some of them do feel a little bit like generic fodder units, even more so than characters in the first game. But with so many more Rune Knights at your disposal, quests and invasions definitely enter a new level. Battle is similar to the first game. Wait, Matt McMuscles? Battle is similar to the first game, but with more options. Like I said, there are more Rune Knights, but there are also more monsters. Some monsters have been replaced by monsters that have similar roles, like the Imp taking over the Fairy's role, or the Elemental taking over the Djinn's role. You also have monsters that mimic the roles of Rune Knights. For example, the new Goblin unit is a lot like a thief. The Pegasus is a lot like a healer, and Elementals are a lot like mages. On top of this, monsters can now equip gear. This really opens up monsters quite a bit. They felt very disposable in the first game, but now you feel like you're really investing in them. Also of note is how Runersia got rid of the attack transitions that Forsena had. Your units now simply have their attacks animate directly on the map. Since I didn't like the battle transitions in the first game, I am very happy with this change. Quests are bigger and there's more of them. You can no longer fail quests, which is great. Spending 1 or 2 rounds doing nothing was a nightmare in the first game. You now have a forecast to tell you what items you may find and what the likelihood of finding them is. You can now also send your squads on training quests to earn experience. This is a really handy way to help level up your lower level units. My go-to strategy was to send 5 or 6 squads to a stronghold, keep 3 of them ready for an invasion, and send the other units off on quests. This ensures you have 3 Rune Knights ready to fight if enemies try to invade, while at the same time gaining experience, finding equipment, or finding new Rune Knights. There's lots more promotions in this game compared to the first. I think every single unit has a promotion or 2, even the dork units. On top of this, Rune Knights can swap their classes when they hit maximum proficiency. If you need a mage but you only have a knight, you can simply change class once they've hit maximum proficiency. This gives you a lot more control over your squads. Also, I don't know where to stick this, so I will stick it right here. The final battle of Runersia is one of the first "here's the final battle, but we are introducing new mechanics" fights I have seen in a long time. But prior to the final fight, you have phantom battles. After you've conquered all of the opposing kingdoms, but before you fight the big bad, you unlock phantom battles. These are basically another new type of quest that will allow you to engage high-level enemies for experience and incredible rewards. It's a really good way to buff up your units, but these battles are very, very hard. The art for Brigandine, The Legend of Runersia is incredible. The artists that brought the game to life are Raita Kazama, Jin Tamura, and Yuta Koyano. Kazama has worked on some of the Xenoblade and Disgaea games, so there's yet another SRPG connection. Game producer Kazuhiro Igarashi wanted the game to have a large and diverse cast of characters, and boy did the artists deliver. The game features over 100 unique character designs and they look stunning. It's a big change from the 90s anime aesthetic of the first game, but I'm a big fan of both styles. In 2000, Brigandine, The Legend of Forsena was re-released as Brigandine Grand Edition. This version has hosts of updates and changes that include new modes, being able to play as Asgares, new cutscenes, voice acting, monsters gaining the ability to equip items, and lots more. Regretfully, this version was not released outside of Japan, but the internet exists and there is an English language patch. Brigandine is a great couple of games that are criminally underrated. What you get is a couple of gameplay-focused tactics gems. They are both pretty simple to get into, but the learning curve develops as you get used to using your actions wisely. Sadly, Brigandine never made huge waves, probably explains why it took 22 years to receive a sequel. And that sequel also didn't make huge waves. I don't know, maybe if it had waifu petting mechanics, the modern Fire Emblem fans would have appreciated it more. Okay, I'm just kidding, chill out. From the time I'm writing this script, it's 2 days away from Fire Emblem Engage, and my body is ready. Willing and able. You jewel. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, the criminal underappreciation for Brigandine. I wouldn't completely write off Brigandine. Like I said in the Triangle Strategy video, there has been a recent bump in popularity of tactics games, so we might get a Brigandine 3. I just hope it doesn't take another 22 years for it to arrive. For RPG Fortress, I've been Richard. See you next time, and don't forget to hug a cat. Goodbye.